As a card collector, and I think I can speak for all of us, we're always on the hunt for a deck of cards that satisfies all the criteria. Design, check. Concept, check. Handling, check. Price, check. Now, our individual needs and leniency for each criteria, that's going to vary. But if, as collectors, we're satisfied with all the above, then adding it to the collection becomes easy. Now, that isn't to say I haven't allowed a deck or 20 into my collection that have failed one or two of my requisites, but this deck, the Drifters deck by Dan & Dave Industries, is not one of them, and it's definitely worth taking a look at.
The Drifters is an original design by Neighborhood Studios and distributed by Art of Play. The deck is printed by the United States Playing Card Company to the specifications of Dan and Dave Buck, and it's a fact that bodes well for the handling category. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Conceptually, the deck draws from the fertile grounds of cowboys and the lawless frontier, and you can see that right away in the tuck case. The tuck is letterpress blue ink printed on slightly off-white matte cardstock. The white areas are all embossed slightly, giving the box a nice texture to the touch. The central design on the front of the tuck is the image of a wandering cowboy, slumped on his horse, perched atop a cliff overlooking the desert plains under a clear night sky. Floral ornamental scrollwork radiates out from the middle. The words "far from home" and "born to roam" further hammering in the deck's conceptual hook. One side of the tuck boasts that the journey is the destination, and the top reads, "Home I'll never be." Ironically, the custom red tack stamp inspired seal contradicts that last one a bit with the copy, "All roads lead home." The back of the tuck features an approximation of the back design of the cards, and we'll get into it in more detail a little later. And of course, the bottom has the traditional ad copy. Inside the box, you'll find two ad cards, one for Art of Play and the other for Dan and Dave and Neighborhood Studios. There are two jokers, once again featuring the cowboy on the cliff, this time on a slightly cloudier night. The two jokers are identical and they are good for magic. The card backs are blue ink on white linen embossed stock. The two-way back design features several elements that carry the drifter motif forward. A couple of rattlesnakes doing their best coiled Ouroboros impersonation. And to add to the creation destruction theme, the snakes are also making the sign of infinity. The snakes are drawn in line art that borrows heavily from Native American design. There are two human skulls cracked and punctured by arrows, yet surrounding all of this death and the highly venomous snakes are desert lilies and other flowering vegetation, and encasing all of this is a very thin poker-style border.
Now, despite the fact that the artwork and the concept behind it has little to do with what you might find on a more standard deck of cards, the design is unique and familiar at the same time. The coiling snakes gives us a recognizable mirrored circle that we might associate with a bicycle rider back, for instance. It's a great back design, but actually it's not my favorite part of these cards.
On the faces, you immediately notice the pips, although traditional, are custom and a bit smaller than the traditional style. The red is a bit more crimson as well. The index font is squared and appropriate while still feeling modern. Overall, the readability is great. The aces all offer a little more than standard aces do. Some intricate scroll work and flourishes decorate them all. The ace of spades, however, is the belle of the ball. Inside you get silhouetted twin revolvers and a skull and bones, with the bones being replaced by brass keys.
Which brings me to my favorite, the court cards. These are, in a word, magnificent. They're the perfect blend of tried and true and new and fresh. Instantly recognizable yet brilliantly customized to match the theme of the deck.
You get the sense that designer Curtis Jenkins had a lot of fun reimagining the standard court members as frontier folk. The King of Spades is the most similar to his standard brethren, with hairstyle and facial hair that matches closely to the way he's been traditionally depicted. But instead of the crown, he's wearing a cowboy hat, and a Navy Colt revolver takes the place of his sword.
All of the court cards have features like this, and some, whether intentionally or not, bring to mind some famous representations of past cowboys you may have seen, both real and imagined.
The Jack of Hearts reminds me of Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp. The Queen of Clubs looks inspired by real-life cowgirl Annie Oakley. The King of Diamonds gives me a Dr. Schultz vibe, and I'll be damned if that's not Teddy Rough Rider Roosevelt holding a poker hand as the Suicide King. Butch and Cassidy are in there somewhere, at least in spirit too, And you've got Bowie knives and rifles and swords and even a Derringer pistol in there. It's really cool and really fun stuff. To bring it full circle, design, concept, check, and check. What about handling? Well, that's a big check too. The cards handle great, as most USPCC decks can boast. They faro and fan nicely. Although not expressly geared towards cardistry, they look great even in one of my less than adequate flourishes. Easily recognizable faces and identical jokers make them good for Magic too, and it's definitely a worthy addition to any collection.
So what about price? Well, they're still available at dananddave.com and on Art of Play, which means you won't have to deal with aftermarket price hikes. eBay and Amazon will have them too. So if you've watched this far, please don't forget to like and subscribe. This is a new channel and I could really use your support. Let me know what other decks you'd like to see reviewed down in the comments. Once again, I've been the Gentleman Wake and I hope to see you next time.